things interculturally. And I just wanted to also say that I'm sitting here with 5 other members of our group, and their names are Cheryl, Kathy, Mary Lynn, Barbara, and Susan.
Wonderful.
I do actually put on the spot, I forget. And so I don't know, here, I'll just show with the video and you can see everybody. This is Susan, Barbara.
I cannot do this. I can't. How do you more?
And then we have over here Mary Lynn. Right, whoops. Whoops. And Kathy and Cheryl.
Wonderful.
There we go.
Okay, that's great. Well, I'm so glad you can all join us. That's very exciting. Lovely to see all your faces. So welcome to everybody. So the names were Cheryl, Kathy, Marie Lynn, Barbara, and
Susan.
Right, welcome. Okay. So I'm going to turn now to both of our topic guides who are able to join us, and invite them to kind of lead us into this conversation. So the way that I'll do this, Jeff and Peter, is what I would like is if first you could just very briefly introduce yourself and say who you are, what's the work that you're doing, and it just that kind of brief introduction, and then we'll do a second round of questions where we'll look more into what's exciting, what's emerging, what are you on the cusp of, that kind of place where new things are emerging. So I wonder, Jeff, if you might be willing to introduce yourself first, and then Peter. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Jeff Wilfong Pritchard, and I'm the minister at St. Andrew's United Church in Edmonton. And we are involved in a couple of programs with the London community here in Edmonton. One is a nonprofit organization that is set up to support the work of the Rwandan, who is also just completing his Doctor of Ministry degree here at St. Stephen's College. He's going to be back for convocation.
So Jeff, I wonder if you could speak up a little bit, because I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm not sure if other people are as well.
Okay, I think I've got my mic boosted as much as I can. So anyway, we are involved, I'll just paraphrase the organization, with the help of St. Andrew's United Church called Yego Canada, which supports the work of Yego Rwanda. And through that, then we've also made some connections with the Rwandan community here in Edmonton. And we're doing some programming with them in terms of leadership development and in terms of supporting families. So if that's enough, I'll stop there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeff. Peter.
Yes, hi. Sorry I was a bit late joining. My name is Peter Lynn. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no. It could be a little, I don't know, how are other people doing it? Could be a little louder for me.
Can anybody hear me? Okay. Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, no, thanks. I don't know, as I say, my name is Peter Lindsay. I'm involved with refugee resettlement through the United Church, Islington United Church in Toronto. I think we are probably the longest operating, continuously operating refugee resettlement organization in the country. We have been doing it for 38 years, and we are enjoying it. So it's something we've had some experience with. When the crisis came, sponsored by Trudeau's desire to bring in 25,000 Syrians, our committee went from about 8 to 22, and we tripled the number of people we thought we could support. But one thing we found, and I'll be very brief because I can talk about it later, many of the committees that were formed as a result of that had no experience at all in refugee resettlement, and were looking for information and resources as to how go about and do it. What do you do on day one? So we decided that that's a role we could play, that given we have experience. And so we've been mounting workshops. We have 5 now so far this year on refugee resettlement, various aspects from mental health to how to find a job in a generic way. And I'll talk more about that when we get to the detailed questions.
Great, thank you, Peter. Okay, Jeff, we'll come back to you. And perhaps you could go into some more detail about kind of what's emerging and kind of where things are looking full of possibility.
All right. Well, I'm just going to back up a little, just so you get a little more of the backstory to this.
Sounds good.
I'm on the Doctor of Ministry Committee at St. Stephen's College, and in 2010, a student from Rwanda came to us by the name of Emmanuel Gatera to do his Doctor of Ministry work. And he was with the Anglican Church of Rwanda and had been charged by the Anglican Church to oversee all the pastoral counseling programs for PTSD that were required by the population of Rwanda after the genocide. And as we got to know Emmanuel at St. Stephen's and some people at my congregation in St. Andrews, we were quite not only taken with his commitment to the work, but the enormity of it. And he had a very small nonprofit organization called Diego Rwanda, which was an organization designed to bring both the youth of the Tutsi and the Hutu populations together in acts of reconciliation and learning, traditional dance being one of the big things that they were doing, and providing some counseling. So a number of people at St. Andrews and in the community thought that was a worthwhile effort to support. So we set up a little nonprofit organization called Diego Canada to fundraise on behalf of Emmanuel. And over the last 5 years, I guess, we've probably raised, I would say, close to $200,000 for Emmanuel through our different events. And you can check out our work on the Diego Canada website.
How do you spell that, Jeff?
Through that, then, of course, we became kind of YEGO.
Oh, why? Sorry, what was that?
YEGO.
YEGO, okay.
And then through that, we got to know some of the people in the Rwandan community here in Edmonton. And in fact, one of their very active members has joined St. Andrews. And through them, then we started to do some things with the Rwandan community here. So we've been a supporter of their Heritage Days Festival. I think you have the same thing in Winnipeg, I'm not sure, but Heritage Days is a huge deal here in Edmonton, where all the different nations come together for a weekend and cultural dance and food and stuff. So there'd be over 300,000 people who would go through that on a day in a weekend. So we help them with organizing that. They have taken to using St. Andrews as a center for their own meetings. We've had some Rwandan weddings here. And then one of the most exciting things that we're doing at the moment is partnering with the Rwandan community with the daycare, which is really a family outreach center that's part of St. Andrews, and the congregation to, and we got some funding for the EDGE network for this. So the daycare is providing, through one of their outreach workers, an unpack and play program for the Rwandan mothers and fathers who now are having their own children, but of course have not had what you might consider lots of, or any, in some cases, parenting experience, because so many of their parents were caught up in the genocide. And so the Unpack and Play program is a program just for the parents to come and learn how to bond with their kids, how to play together, how to tell stories. We've got that going, and we're doing that in partnership with a Rwandan cultural dance program that our board member Joy actually organizes. She's a cultural dancer, and so they will. We were hoping to start them at the same time, but the dance program is just a little late getting started. It's going to be running Saturday afternoons, so the community is going to come in and learn cultural dance. And we are still, the third component of that is a mentoring buddy system for members of the congregation and the community to come together and help some of the kids in the Rwandan community with homework assignments and reading skills and any activity that they need related to their schooling. And so it's very much a partnership. And I guess one of the exciting things is that it's where St. Andrew's congregation is in partnership with our own daycare, which actually is a separate organization, and the Rwandan community, and the larger community in which the neighborhood finds itself. And so it's really not a specific St. Andrew's program. It really is, like I said, a joint or at least a three-way partnership.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. Lots of richness in there. Lots to think about. Lots of, I'm sure folk have questions and pieces that are resonating for them. But before we get to that, we'll go to Peter. And Peter, invite you to speak about kind of all of what has happened for you with this kind of burst that's happened within our country around embracing refugees and the need and opportunity that that's created. So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm very excited about the opportunity to work with refugees in this country. And one of the things I didn't realize when we got in, I've been involved with the committee for a number of years now, is that Canada is probably the only country in the world that allows private citizens to sponsor refugees coming into the country. There are government-sponsored refugees who the government looks after financially, but doesn't do a very good job in psychosocial integration and those kinds of things. So the fact that Canada does that, and I think does a much better job of it if you look at the stats and so forth, because they become welcome into a family. They become integrated into the community as such, which is such a huge step for them as they come to the new country. So I just wanted to put a plug in for Canada. As I say, my chest puffs out when I hear it. It's good to know that, and it's good to know we now have countries, apparently according to the minister, coming from all over the world to learn how Canada uses its citizenry to help welcome newcomers into the community, and they do it in a way that it's volunteer work from the citizens. We raise the money for it, so it's not a stress on the Canadian government. And I just think it's a great idea, and it's particularly pleasing for me when I look across the border and realize the kind of stance they take towards the newcomers that are coming into the community. So I just wanted to say that, but let me get back to our program. As I mentioned before, we've been doing refugee resettlement in our church for about we're coming up to our 40th year anniversary. We're just trying to plan a party for that. So we've had a lot of experience. We've had a lot of acceptance in the church community for doing what we do, and they feel pleased with it. We have a rogues gallery, I guess I could call it, along the long halls of our church, which are pictures of the families that we have brought and supported into the country. So it's been a pleasant and rewarding activity.
So, Peter, at some point, would you be able to send me a picture of that wall? Could you take a photograph of that wall and send it to me? I would love to see that. That sounds amazing.
Well, Sarah, I'm more than happy to do that. The only question I thought, we've had some refugees who do not, A, want to be called refugees, and I can understand that, and B, do not want to be identified.
Yeah,
now,
okay.
90% of them would be okay, but I have to make sure we have clearance from them that they're comfortable doing that. But apart from that, sure, I'd be happy to send that wall. It's quite impressive because it comes from all over the world, and it's
yeah, that makes sense.
Something you walk by when you go to church, and so you can your neighbor. Yeah. Okay, so let me get back to some of the things that we're doing. As I said last year, when the crisis came and there was so much visibility for refugee resettlement, we tried to respond by increasing the size of our committee, tripling the number of families we were willing to support in a year. And our committee went from 8 to about 22 or 23.
many newcomers coming into the committee, and trying to evaluate, is there things we could do other than focusing on the resettlement of an individual family? That's what we've been doing, and I guess that's what most refugee resettlement organizations do. But we are looking for other ways that we could support the activity and the endeavor. That led us to looking at, can we share our knowledge and can we help other groups, these private groups, learn about what to do and answer their questions that they have. That led us to doing a series of workshops, and we have now, the last one was last Saturday, and that was the number 5. Basically, the workshop is focused on a topic that the families and that the sponsors feel is important for them to discuss. And the topics we've dealt with so far would be, we started with being a Syrian. That is, what are the cultural and differences of a Syrian who comes here and learns to try to accommodate to our community. The second one was on health, including mental health, and how we accommodate that. The third one was on finding job opportunities and how that goes about. And the fourth one was on the what do you do after year 12, after month 12? As you all know, as a private sponsor, you're responsible financially for the first 12 months, and then they're on their own, so to speak. Well, they can't be on their own because they haven't got enough in 12 months to make them self-sufficient. But the question is, so how do you deal with that transition from sponsorship to non-sponsorship? And the last one we did focused on women's roles and women's integration into the community. Oftentimes we have found that focus has always been on the male members of the family, and that's in part because of the cultural issues around that family. The male man tends to be the dominant person in the family, tends to be the breadwinner, and basically what happens when they come here, in my experience, that man gets emasculated because he doesn't have a job. He has to go back to school to learn a language. Many of the things that provide him with authority in the family are being removed, and so it's a tricky situation to how to deal with that. But it's also very important for the women to be part of the process. So the last one we ran was on ways in which you can help women integrate into the community, and the topics we discussed under that was community kitchens. I don't know, that's a popular idea in this area, that kitchen, when the woman comes, they can cook, and they usually can cook very well, and there's usually a need or a demand or a customer base who likes Mideastern food. So we have set up community kitchens with women, Syrian women, who come in and gather and cook food, and they have suppers. There's one next Friday where they'll put on a supper for the people to come and enjoy it. And a second one in that area was sort of the daycare activities, and that's combined with kind of child rearing practices, learning how to get through into the school system, learning how to, what the Canadian society considers proper parenting practices, so they don't run into that way. One of the experiences we've had is many of them are terrified of the Children's Aid Society. They don't understand that concept. They never experienced it. They're frightened that somebody's going to come and take their kids if they don't do it right. So there's a lot of those things that you have to handle. That was a third. We had 4 topics on this. So the other 2 topics was dealing with seniors, which I didn't know we had that many, but it turns out we do. And the fourth one was I guess you'd call it an arts type of thing. It's based on photography and talking about photography and talking about their lives in that context. And the plan for that is to have a show of the women taking pictures of themselves in different aspects that tells the story of their life, which we're hoping to have a show at the Art Gallery of Ontario, which is a major gallery in this region of the country. So that's, at the moment, that's a wish, but they haven't said no yet. So we are still working on it.
I love it. I love that attitude. They haven't said no yet. I love it. That's great. Excuse me. So Peter, that's also very rich. So many interesting things that you're doing. And one piece I just need to say here, from my experience of doing these calls on some other subjects, is it's very possible that you are going to hear something and you're going to say, oh, that's exactly what I want and I need more of that. And it will probably be more than what we can provide in this call together. But one of the questions that you received on your agenda was, is it okay for me to share contact information? Sorry. Sorry, Peter, can you hear me? One of the things I was wanting to do
We get in and out.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to do was to share contact information that everybody has so that you can speak to one another and do the networking that you need to do to follow up on what's been shared. So what I'd like to do at this point is I'd like to go to Amber, the folk that are there with you in Golden, and I'd love to give your kind of space and your table an opportunity to speak to perhaps things that are resonating with you or something that's capturing your attention, and perhaps in the midst of that, very briefly to introduce kind of what you're working on in Golden as well, because you've got 5 people around the table there. So whatever you're doing is obviously of value and importance to your community, which is super exciting. So I wonder if you'd be willing to kind of step into the space for a few minutes and share what's resonating and also kind of what you're working on. Go ahead. We can't hear you yet, so I will unmute you. There.
That's good. I was just checking on who wanted to talk, but so yeah, I think Cheryl will say a few words, and then if other people have something to say, we'll pass the mic around at our end. I think you need to put names right?
Okay. Okay. So Cheryl Walker. So our committee has been really busy working at the fundraising in particular. So we thought this was a very daunting task that we were to raise this amount, but it's actually come quite quickly, and our community has been hugely generous. We've been very surprised and very heartened by that. So now we're in the process of, we have been approved as sponsors. And now we're told that we're going to have about a year's wait before our family will come. So we've raised our money. We have another couple of events, or one in particular, our multicultural fair. But our family is waiting. They're in Jordan. He's going back to Saudi Arabia. But it's like we're in hold mode. So it's hugely frustrating for us to have. We've been really busy, but we're not moving on with our family, and we'd like to know how other groups have dealt with that situation. I don't know whether they've had to wait as long as we have. We thought that our family might be here by the end of this year, but now it looks like it's more likely to be closer to the end of next year. So are other people also in this position? Do anybody else have any comments about that?
Peter, I wonder if you'd like to speak to that reality. I'm sure you've lived that numerous times.
We have indeed, but I guess for some reason, I don't know whether they think we have been doing enough in the past that they do move the people on quickly. In the recent crisis, we haven't run into that. They've been very prompt that we will choose people that we want to support, and they've been very prompt in moving them through. We don't really know, although we have 2 people we're waiting on from different countries, and we don't know. They said anytime within the year, just a similar experience that you're having. But that, as you know, you have the money, and it's really frustrating if you have everything going. What's especially frustrating is they say they're coming on Friday, and you rent an apartment with a lease on it, and they don't show up to 6 months from Friday. That's a difficult deal to cope with. So I can sympathize towards that. But it's great that you are hanging in there and doing it. And in our experience, they do come. Right now, as I say, I guess we have more than we think we can handle in terms of the number of families that are arriving.
Great, thank you, Peter. Okay, any other resonance or questions or comments that people would like to speak to?
Can I just reinforce, is there?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, just jump in, is that what you're saying? The fundraising is another thing that always appears if you're starting out it's going to be difficult. In our experience, that's the simplest part of it. We now assume the money will come if we need it. and everything, including we organized a bus trip to Niagara Falls, which is a great sort of tourist attraction here. We had 35 refugee families and their kids go. And our big worry is we had no money for the bus. We had no budget for the bus. And we put a call out saying what we were doing, and we made money on it. At the end, we got more money back than the bus cost us, and the trip was phenomenal. I mean, it was you know, it is one of the wonders of the world. I live right next to it, so I don't pay much attention, but I went with them, and I was blown away as well. But so money is not, to me, does not seem to be an issue. We have a big, healthy bankroll at the moment, and we're waiting. It's all designated for newcomers coming in, but it's taking, take a while for them to finally show up. That's
great. Thank you so much. I just love that image of Niagara Falls, the abundance of Niagara Falls and the abundance of money. There's like a metaphor. I love it. It's great. Okay. Anyone else who has a comment or resonance that they would like to speak to or question?
Jeff here.
Hi, Jeff.
We had a similar situation with another partnership we had with one of the community leagues here in Edmonton that was sponsoring a Syrian refugee. And so we partnered with them to handle all the money and all the tax receipting because, of course, we have charitable status, and they didn't. And we had all the money raised and couldn't get a family. That was under the 50,000 quota program. And I gather there were a number of people across the country who were quite disappointed with that because there were far more people who were applying than there were possibilities for processing at the time. So we took all of that money with the permission of the community and put it in with another community league here in Edmonton that was sponsoring another family, just so we could get that one family really well supported. So another story.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. I know, Martin, you had some particular questions about how to help keep these strangers who become neighbors in your neighborhood. And I'm just wondering if you wanted to pursue that question, or Jeff and Peter, if you have any thoughts about that from your experience.
Well, one of the things you have to realize that being in rural Prince Edward Island, we don't have the Syrian community that supplies translation when people come over. I have to tell you that the public library system is what we have to depend on. People have to pick up phraseology from rocket languages, and you can study Arabic over the library system here and hopefully help them out. Likewise, they can go there and learn English as another language. But it's a major barrier not having that type of resource here. And I really wish that maybe governments would understand that if you want to keep newcomers to Canada in rural areas, you have to provide those resources. But they seem to be rather centralized in the urban centers. And it's a major problem. And it's not that, that we don't want them here. It's just very hard to keep them here when there's no community, fewer resources, economics are not in our favor, and yet we had no problem raising the money to bring them over.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point.
Very interesting, Martin. Very interesting. I feel like a very rich man because we have so many resources in Toronto. That's not an issue in Toronto. And I want to reinforce how important the library is. That's got a wonderful set of resources for children and for the adults and for moms who want to go and have an afternoon and meet other mothers. One of our keynote speakers was a very recent refugee that came here from Syria, who was one of the resource people on our workshop on Saturday. And she has used the library. She says it's a godsend to her. She could not get by without that. So that's an important thing to make sure you track down. But I can see where it would be very difficult in a rural community where you don't have those resources. And I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I'd like to make another issue. In Toronto, we are very fortunate. We have an organization called the Arab Community Center for Toronto, ACCT. And that's an Arab organization which has many, many Arab speakers. In fact, I think they say they will support 37 different languages So if a refugee settlement group wants somebody to interpret, go to the airport with them, come over and go over the agreements that they're having, try to explain the financial situation, they're very happy to do that, and they do come. And when we now are having collaborative interfaith meals with that organization, so our church will put up meals, invite the non-Muslim population, and the Arab Community Center will invite their groups, and it turns out to be a very pleasant and a very nice way to go. So we have been partnering with them, I guess, right from the start, and they were a co-sponsor for most of our workshops. They provide a lot of the resources. So I can see where we are a luxury operation in that respect. We don't have to solve some of the problems that the rural communities have to.
Great. Okay, I'd like to come back to the group kind of hanging out with Golden. Karen or the group with Amber, do you have any questions or resonances that you'd like to share? Okay. I think you're muted, Karen. I can see you're trying to speak. Can you unmute yourself along the bottom?
She's unmuted.
There we are. Great. Oh, you've gone again.
It's all connected, right?
I see your lips moving.
We can see your lips moving, but not hear you very well.
Mute me and see.
I wonder if you'd take off your headphones and just use your speaker on your laptop.
Okay.
That's better. Thanks.
Does it work?
Yep.
Okay. My son is home from school today and he's hanging out, so I thought it was hard to hear, so I thought I'd put the headphones on for a bit. But anyway, I was just thinking about the language issue that Martin brought up, and at first when we didn't know our family at all, of course that was going to be a pretty major issue in our small town as well. We're 2.5 hours from any size of city, and we were looking into the online programs and things, but we knew it would be a barrier. And so when families got put before us and we said to the United Church, you pick, they were wise enough, I think, to choose a family that were all English speakers. The mother is an English teacher. And so God willing, this family comes. I think that's not going to be our major problem, but it just makes me think that there may be other people who are English speakers who can assimilate. I don't think that the language problem will be our biggest problem. There may be other issues and they may choose to go to the big city, and we're okay with that. But we think there's a bigger chance. Also, I think that the dad will have some potential good employment opportunity in our town. So it makes me think that maybe with an English-speaking family that assimilates into our town and is interested in staying, they might be the beginning of a larger community that can bring other, not that they will bring others, but that if others are brought, that it might be the start of other refugee families being willing to stay in a rural area. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I was thinking as we were listening.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Amber, anything else from your group there in terms of questions or resonance or wonderings? Things that have kind of they appreciate or think are exciting in what they've heard?
I was just volunteering to that they have anything pressing to say. I mean, I think I didn't know what the session was today, so I'm finding it very interesting just to hear from some of the individuals who have some experience with this, because basically I have no experience with this except for the fundraising that we've done and my own background in international settings in the past. But so I just want to say that I so far found it quite interesting to listen to those that have really worked in this for a number of years give their thoughts. That would be from my perspective, what I've got out of it. But we do definitely, I mean, one of the things I'm always listening for is how to work with the rural setting, because definitely the feedback from Toronto was great, but how to translate that to a small mountain community isn't always obvious. So, yeah.
So we have mountain communities and island communities and big cities, and we're trying to kind of find our way amongst and between them in terms of what's replicable, what you have to figure out from scratch, and yeah. So go ahead, Peter, and then Karen.
Okay, just going to say we have to learn to talk to each other. This is inclusive, but I agree 100%, and I'm just making notes about the rural issues, and if there's any way that we contribute or be involved or help in that part of ours is clearly not a rural situation, but I can see where there's a lot of special needs that come out of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Karen?
Yeah, I had a question as well that came out of the talking about language, and one of the gifts of our family speaking English is that we have been encouraged by the United Church to be Skyping and talking with them, and so since last winter we have been emailing with them, and so we're able to support them at least from a distance to get through this time and to get to know them, which has been a really amazing thing. And so I think we're starting to feel really connected. And it occurred to me that I wondered how frequently that happens and how frequently you are able to have a relationship already before they come.
Mm-hmm. Excellent question.
I don't want to dominate, but can I respond to that?
Yeah, and then I want to ask Jeff another question before we kind of run out of time. So go ahead, Peter.
No, I just if they speak English, of course, and they have access to Skype, we do that, and that can be quite an extensive interaction before they do come. The other comment I had was English is so crucial, and the level of proficiency of English is really fundamental to what their opportunities are here. So when they arrive, the whole focus is going to English classes. That's their job, to learn English. Now, if this couple or family does have English altogether, that's a huge step forward, and I think you'll find it a very useful and helpful way to integrate them into all kinds of activities. The most recent example, I'll go back to this woman from Syria. Both she and her husband, she is totally fluent in English. You couldn't tell that English was not her native tongue. She is very outgoing in the sense that the library was the big link for her. When she said, once I found the library and I got to know other mothers, because she has children, he said, it's changed it altogether. My kids getting invited to birthday parties. It's a whole different mix. So when we find a family that does speak English, we are really thankful, because we feel it'll be a lot easier to move them forward. And even to go forward with training and job stuff, English is fundamental. So I think you are privileged then that you'll find that's a useful, a wonderful support for it.
Great. So Jeff, I was just really reflecting on your story that you shared, and it sounds like, if I'm hearing correctly, that your journey in kind of the discovery of this relationship with Rwandans in Edmonton was through initially an international connection, and then it was kind of through that international connection that you kind of started to kind of be in a kind of a relationship and supportive relationship with Rwandans in Canada.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Cool. So that's I found that kind of really very interesting, and I really loved some of the ideas that you were talking about in terms of the way that it seems very integrated and very neighborly, as opposed to maybe I want to say charity, if you know what I mean.
No, that's very true. And the reality of Edmonton, like most urban centers in Canada now, is that there are people from all over the world here, and they do have their own communities. but it's very easy for us to segregate from them and for them to stay with their own community and not feel that they're connected to anything larger. And so we've been intentional about reaching out to them, but not as a charity, as a partnership, because we've got lots of skills that we can help them with. They bring a lot to us. And one very gratifying thing was the Rwandan community had its annual general meeting at St. Andrews last February. And when they sent the High Commissioner sent a representative from Ottawa to the meeting, and she was very laudatory of the Rwandan community in Edmonton and us at St. Andrews for forging that kind of relationship, because she said that's a real sign of maturity and strength on the part of the Rwandan community, that they are now looking outside of their own boundaries to strengthen themselves, to show up and say, here's what we have to offer. And it's been a great time.
That's great. I'm thinking both Peter and Jeff, if you're able to send me some links to websites and things like that, I'm sure that would be really helpful to forward to people, because to kind of be able to kind of gather more information about the work that you're doing. So one of the things that we try to do with these calls is to make space at the end for people to check out. And just to say kind of what's been the gift of this call and what they're going to take away with them. I'm sure many things, but just perhaps whatever might be top of mind in terms of something that you value or appreciate or have learned from the conversation that we've had today. And I'm going to start just by saying I'm completely intrigued, and the journalist part of me thinks that I should go check this out. Peter, your comments about Canada being the kind of only country that does private sponsorships and community sponsorships, I just find that mind-blowing. Anyway, it's just a huge, it just feels like there's so much to unpack in that reality. Yeah, anyway, that would be my checkout. So it's been rich, 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 rich. And I'm so inspired by all the creativity that's happening. So lots of lovely things. I want to see the dancing. So much dancing everywhere. It's great. Okay, I'll stop now. Sorry, Jeff, would you like to go next?
Well, it's great to be in touch with everybody and to hear about what's going on in terms of sponsorship. And I guess the takeaway for me is, how much like Peter, how lucky we are in the urban areas that we've got lots of resources. So I'm wondering, is there any way that we can support the rural churches in terms of sponsorship or in terms of newcomers? And I don't have an answer to that, but if there's any way of doing it, we'd be glad to.
Great, that's wonderful, thank you. Amber, what about for you with your colleagues and friends? Would there be anything you'd like to share by way of checkout?
She's not. No sound.
Sorry about that. So I guess a couple of us have something to contribute, but I just wanted to say two things. One is that the library is a brilliant idea. We have a great library in our small town. And number two is that some of the sessions that somebody mentioned earlier, Peter, I think, which was for working with refugees and the different, like one of them was about helping women integrate and all that. That sounds like something that would be really useful. So it was, and the other thing I wanted to say is that it's super nice to be on a call with other people that are working in this area, because it's sort of odd when you're in a little tiny community and you're kind of new in it to understand that there's a large network of people working on the same kind of projects. So that I thought was really nice as well. So, and Susan has something to say. So thanks, everybody. It was great.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say that I found it also very interesting, the workshops that were set up that Peter mentioned, 5 of them so far. And also that the partnerships, the activities and the resources in working with the refugee families once they arrive in the community, I think is very worthwhile, and it was interesting to hear about different things that are happening in that regard. So thank you.
Thank you. Karen or Martin, would you like to check out and share?
Well, I'd just like to say thanks for all the good ideas, Peter and Jeff. And well, maybe because next year I plan to retire, I think I'm going to go to the library and learn Arabic.
Good for you. Great.
Great.
Karen.
Well, I was actually wondering if there was someone else still with Amber that wanted to talk. Was there another person or just Susan?
No, we're good here. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm good too. I agree with the others that it was good. I feel like this was just scratching the surface though. I feel like there could be more. So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Thank you. And Millie, I know that you've been listening and you sent a chat message to say that this helped you to become better focused on your community networking event for 2018, and you shared your thanks. So we're really glad that you stuck with us. I'm sorry the technology didn't work to kind of support your us being able to hear your voice, but thanks for hanging out. Okay, all right, well that brings us to the end of our call, and we'll try to, as I said, I'll be sending out an opportunity for feedback through a survey, and also at some point a link to the recording so that we can share that, and hopefully also the links to some of the work that Jeff and Peter are doing. So I'd like to say this has felt very, very rich time, and thank you everybody for your contributions, and it just feels so good in the midst of many of the things that are happening in our countries and south of the border, that to know that there are places where strangers are becoming neighbors, and we are being open to one another and being enriched and blessed through that openness. So I really appreciate the work you're doing and your sharing. Yeah, Peter.
May I just say, I didn't get it in. We are now applying for funding. We did everything so far free, not free. The church was donated and the food was donated, but we hadn't spent anything in terms of having activities. So you can go a long ways without having a big budget. But we are now wanting to review what we're doing to establish what should be done next. What are the important criteria? And one of the things that come from this is how crucial the difference is between rural settings and urban settings, and how can we handle that? We are hiring a consultant who hopefully will come and do a systematic evaluation, and I hope your names will be on the list of people to consult as to what you would like to happen that way, that you think you need in order to do your welcoming better.
Very exciting. Great. So you guys are going to be getting a call from a consultant. I love it. Good work. Okay. Well, thanks so much. And please visit the online conversations listed on the EDGE website and see if there are any other ones that would be of value to yourself or your networks, and share those. And I look forward to seeing you again, either online or maybe in person sometime. So thank you very much. Take care. And wait, we can all wait to say goodbye. Bye-bye. See you.
Oh, Millie's back on. Goodbye, Millie. Oh, she just left.